everyone, my name is Mackenzie Patel and I'm the CEO and co-founder of HashBasis, a crypto-native accounting firm based in San Francisco. We've helped businesses and individuals with their crypto accounting, crypto tax, and also subledger implementation needs. Now, I wanted to make a 3-part YouTube series talking about my accounting journey so far in an effort to promote the accounting profession, because in case you didn't know, the accounting profession is going through a little bit of a crisis right now. In fact, the Wall Street Journal wrote, more than 300,000 US accountants and auditors have left their jobs in the past 2 years, a 17% decline, and the dwindling number of college students coming into the field can't fill the gap. So this shortage is due to a variety of factors, but some of the big ones are, 1, there's grueling hours in the Big Four, there's low pay, repetitive tasks, and no real upside except being a partner, but that could take 10 to 15 years, if not longer, to actually realize that. So just to put this a little bit into perspective, my starting salary when I got an offer at Big Four was around $52,000, which is pretty low for this day and age, considering how much school you really have to go through and everything you have to learn. And it's much lower compared to other starting salaries, for example, software engineering or really anything in the engineering field. So it's no wonder people aren't really going into accounting anymore, because it's just not as attractive as I think it used to be. But I really want to rewrite that story, because I think accounting is really interesting and also just a really great profession and skill set to really have. It can be very rewarding. So I just wanted to share my journey with everyone here, to get more young people and just people in general into, entering the accounting profession and being excited about it. You keep hearing stories about, AI is going to automate accounting. There's gonna be no more need for accountants, but people said the same thing about crypto and how blockchain is gonna automate away all accountants. But in fact, crypto accounting is super messy and the industry needs accountants more than ever. So accounting is not really gonna go anywhere. And overall, it's just a really great skill set to have in terms of critical thinking and just knowing how to run a business. Really can't go wrong with knowing those two things. So part 1 of this video is going to cover my journey while I was a student at the University of Florida, getting my accounting degree all the way up until I graduated and ending off when I start my first job in the real world. So going through the first, couple of years as I was just learning about accounting and getting up to speed on the profession. So let's dive in. For context, I started college in the summer of 15 and I attended the University of Florida. And so my parents, they drove me up from Gainesville in the summer, so it was, a million degrees. And Gainesville is also known for being a small college town that's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but I happen to really like it. There was some really beautiful nature like the Hawthorne Trail, Devil's Den, and also a vibrant hippie community. Michael Singer, he's actually the author of this book called Untethered Soul, which is a super popular book, has sold millions of copies worldwide. And he had a temple right outside of Gainesville, I think near Ocala in Florida. So super random, but also at University of Florida, I found the caliber of students to be really high, and I just love the group of people that I was surrounded with. And in general, the accounting degree at UF was also pretty well known. But I didn't start off as accounting. I actually started off my major at being an electrical engineer. So this was summer of 2015. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I just chose electrical engineering because that is what my dad does. And so I thought, okay, we're pretty similar, maybe I'll like that. But I quickly changed that and I switched to accounting because I realized I didn't want to actually program. I had this mental block, I guess, with it since I did take AP programming in high school, and it was just a bad experience. So I was like, okay, I don't want to program, so I'm not going to do engineering. And at the time, my sister's boyfriend, now husband, he was also at University of Florida and doing a degree in accounting. And I thought he was pretty cool. We were pretty similar. So I was like, okay, if he's doing it, maybe I'll do it as well. So, because I wanted a major that was challenging, but that just wasn't engineering. And just based on what I heard from other people, accounting was basically that major, because it was known as the hardest business major, which to me sounded really appealing. So my goal is to do what's known as the 3-2 program at UF, which means there's 3 years of undergraduate and then 2 years of graduate school. And so at the end, you get both a bachelor's and a master's degree. And so you have 150 hours, which is needed currently to sit for the CPA exam, which is why I did that. So I remember then in fall of 2015, I took my first accounting course, which is Intro to Financial Accounting. And that's known as being a weed out course. They make it unnecessarily difficult just so people drop out of the major, which I think is kind of dumb, but I actually happened to really enjoy the course. It was one of those really large lecture halls, 500 people there. But for some reason, I really liked it. Just the world of debits and credits was fascinating to me. And once I understood what a debit and credit was, the whole thing just kind of, at least the foundations of it, kind of clicked with me. For the longest time, I thought credits were related to credit cards and like debit cards, but that's actually not what it is at all. Debits and credits are just kind of an arbitrary designation. And once I figured that, I was like, oh, like this is actually, pretty cool. So fast forward, my summer after my freshman year, I actually did an internship with Deloitte, and it was called the Pioneer Internship Program, and it was meant to get students into the Big Four funnel early. So just a side note, in case you're unfamiliar, the Big Four stands for the Big Four accounting firms. So there's Deloitte, PwC, EY, and KPMG. They grew out of, I believe it was the Big Eight, but the Big Eight imploded after all the frauds and scandals of Enron, WorldCom, things like that, and now we're left with the Big Four today. These Big Four firms do audits, they do tax, they do consulting, advisory, just a whole bunch of accounting and other financial services. So just a quick side note, UF has something called the Career Showcase, which is basically a forum where students can go and look for jobs and internships. And fun fact, the Career Showcase at UF is, quote, the largest campus-hosted career fair in the Southeast. So it's a pretty big deal, and usually it's hosted or when I was going to school there, it was in our basketball stadium called the O'Connell Center. And so just imagine a huge basketball stadium, there's a ton of students, and we're all dressed in business professional attire, so suits, pantsuits, the whole thing, and everyone's just really sweaty and kind of disgusting because it's Florida in the summer and everyone's nervous, they're trying to get a job, and they're also in this like ridiculous getup. So I remember being there, and I went as a freshman, which freshmen don't really go, but I figured, might as well give it a shot. And that's when I met with Deloitte, and they were the only Big Four firm that was accepting or had programs for freshmen at the time. So I thought, great, let me just do this, get some work experience, and it was also a paid internship, so I was making some money, so I figured, might as well. And so my internship was actually in Atlanta, which is a really big hub for the Big Four. And because I chose Atlanta because my sister lived there at the time, out there in Buckhead. And so it was a pretty good internship. I don't really recall much because I was 19 at the time, but I just remember that it exposed me to what corporate life was like, in the US. And you did the whole thing, like you had to get dressed. I was going to the office downtown, taking the public transportation, which is called MARTA, to get there. And it was just a great exposure because I hadn't really gotten that before. Now the work itself was all right. It was mostly just, quote unquote intern work. So making copies, doing some hole punches, like things like that. I think I ticked and tied some part of a financial statement. I don't really recall, but yeah, just doing work like that. But I do remember, going downtown, and I felt rich because I was making $20 an hour as a 19-year-old, and I thought that was amazing. More than I'd ever, really made. And so this cycle pretty much repeated itself. So I went back to school then for my sophomore year. Then that summer after sophomore year, I did another Deloitte internship. Then I went to school for junior year, and then after junior year, I did another Deloitte internship. And this last internship, the one after my junior year, is the one that really stands out to me the most because it was my audit internship. So this is like the big internship that you do, and then, hopefully you get a job offer, and then you start as a full-time staff once you graduate. So yeah, I just remember because the audit one, it required a lot of travel because I had a lot of clients, or I was interning for a lot of clients that were not directly in Atlanta. They were kind of far outside the city, like Madison, Georgia, for example. So I remember I just had to do a lot of driving on Georgia interstates, which were really scary. They have really high death rates, actually. So didn't really love doing that. But yeah, the client sites were just really far. My sister was living in Dunwoody at the time, which is a suburb in Atlanta. And so it was like 1.5 hour drives each way, each day. So this is a point where I got kind of disillusioned with Big Four because I would wake up at 6 a.m. I'd leave at 6:45, get to the client site around 8 a.m. and then you couldn't really leave until the person you worked for left. And so I often found myself leaving at like 6:30, 7, and then I wouldn't really get home until, like 8:30, 9. And I just got kind of disillusioned because I was like, wow, I have no life and I'm just an intern. I would just go to bed, wake up, and then kind of repeat and do the same thing. And so yeah, I kept just trying to force myself to like Big Four, even though I knew it just wasn't really what I wanted to do. Now, I like working hard, like don't get me wrong, I work all the time and I really enjoy it, but just this type of work and just, the whole culture wasn't really my cup of tea per se. So at the end of the summer, Deloitte ended up giving me a full-time job offer, but some part of me I just knew I couldn't do it, so I ended up turning it down. And I thought it was so dumb at the time because all my friends, they were all doing Big Four, they were all so excited, and I just couldn't get myself to lie to myself. And so I didn't take the offer, and I was kind of, back to square zero or back to the drawing board. So by this time though, my senior year was basically the first year of grad school since I did the 3-2 program. And I just remember enjoying a lot of the classes I was taking. There was IT audit, mergers and acquisitions, accounting for risk courses, and I thought that was great. I was a total nerd. I love school. I still love school and learning. So yeah, lots of audit and tax courses, which were, less fun, but more oriented around what the Big Four wants you to learn. And UF just in general is known for having a really top-notch accounting program, and it's just a really main funnel to Big Four firms in the Southeast United States. So most of my classes were pretty good. There were some duds like forensic accounting, commercial law, those were pretty terrible, but the classes that actually mattered, UF did pretty well. So, and I also had to take the GMAT, which is kind of like the GRE to get admitted to grad school, but I just checked UF's site and you don't actually have to take that anymore, so maybe that's like a nationwide thing now. So then now let's fast forward a little bit. I had to go to Career Showcase another time, and this time I feel like I just felt kind of bad about myself because again, all my friends already had internships and here I was, a senior, and I was out there again in my suit, getting all red and sweaty, but it was okay. So I was talking to more Big Four, some smaller regional firms, but I just wasn't really feeling it with a lot of the other firms. And the thing about UF is that this accounting students especially, they get courted. And so by that, I mean, we have our accounting building. It's called Gerson Hall of Accounting. And accounting firms will literally come into the building, and during lunch, for example, they will give students free food. So it's so much Chick-fil-A, so much Moe's, so much Chipotle, and they just come give you free food, which of course students love. And then you just talk with them, and that's kind of how these students get lured into this funnel. Students hear about all the good sides of these accounting firms, but not, the bad sides of the firms, as you discover when you start working there. So students pretty much just have jobs waiting for them, which is, the good part about accounting, but job security, it's important, but it's not the only thing that matters when it comes to, working. But one day I saw that a company called Honeywell actually had a booth in the accounting hall. And so I thought this was interesting. I was like, well, Honeywell's not an accounting firm, right? And I was only familiar with them because my dad works at Raytheon, and Raytheon and Honeywell, they're both kind of in the defense sector. Honeywell does a lot more, like the fans, for instance, you might have heard of. And so I was really curious. I talked to the people that were there, and they were telling me they had something called the Future Finance Leaders Program. And so that sounded exciting to me, and it also it was new because I'd never really heard of an accountant going in-house after college. And so I was like, okay, maybe this will be more my speed since I just didn't really fit into the Big Four world. So Honeywell, they actually have a big hub in Phoenix. That's where their aerospace headquarters are located. And so I thought it was really cool because they manufacture jet engines, APUs, avionics, just kind of the parts related to the aircraft. And I thought that was cool. I always love flying, and just the manufacturing sector I thought was really interesting. So I interviewed for being an intern in their Future Finance Leaders program, and I ended up getting it. And so my internship was actually in Phoenix. And so my dad and I, we did a cross-country road trip all the way from St. Petersburg, Florida, all the way over to Phoenix. That was really fun, driving through Mississippi, seeing the Mississippi River, all that kind of stuff was really cool. So in Honeywell, the good part is that they actually put me up in corporate housing in Chandler, Arizona. So already off the bat, I felt a little bit more welcomed and more appreciated. And I was like, oh, is this kind of what working in a corporation actually feels like? And so just based off that experience, I could tell that this internship was definitely going to be different. And as I went throughout the summer, I ended up just liking it a lot more. It was a lot more laid back. Now, we still worked quite a bit, but it was just a very different work environment than what I encountered at the Big Four. And I felt like it was good to feel like I had ownership over one project in sort of the division that I was in. And so the way the internship was structured is that I had an intern manager who was really awesome. She was so cool. I loved working with her. And I would do, ad hoc projects that she needed help with, but also I had one main project that I was working on during the summer. And so then at the end of the summer, all the interns, we did a presentation to the CFO of Honeywell Aerospace, and then our intern managers and also all the other interns. And so that's obviously nerve-wracking doing a presentation in front of the CFO, but it was also an excellent public speaking experience. And I had a ball. I realized that, hey, public speaking is really fun, and Honeywell helped me realize that. And it just felt really nice to be on a team and this type of rotational program where all the, like even the interns, I felt really valued. So yeah, when they gave me an offer at the end of the summer, I happily accepted it, and I felt more at home than I expected. So side note on Phoenix, just because I want to talk about that a little bit, it's no joke, like doing summers in Arizona. I remember getting into my car at the end of the day, so let's say like around like 5 p.m., and it was literally 120 degrees in my car. You would burn yourself if you touched the metal around your seatbelt. So that was different. From Florida, so I'm used to the heat, but that was just on a whole another level. But the nature was really amazing, and I remember that summer when I was interning, every weekend I would just do a different road trip. So Sedona, Meteor Crater, Grand Canyon, was the other one, Joshua Tree. And so I don't know, I really liked the desert landscape. I felt very at home there, and so I was really excited to start full-time and just kind of be out in the West. I was right by Camelback Mountain as well, so really enjoyed that. So then I returned to Gainesville for my last year of college. So this was at my fifth and final year, so 2019 to 2020. And honestly, I kind of coasted this year. I don't know if it was just at UF, but UF had this policy called the 3-0 and go. Well, it was an unofficial policy, but professors would just kind of give everyone a B if they just showed up to class. If you did extra work, like if you actually did the assignments, you would get an A, but just kind of by being there, they automatically gave you a B, which was kind of interesting. So yeah, I put in effort because I wanted to get the A, but you didn't really have to. And at this time, I was also a TA for the mergers and acquisitions course. That was just my favorite class in college. It was so fun. So really enjoyed doing that. And and then I started studying for my CPA exams because you can actually start taking them even when you're still in school. But a side note on that, because there was a little bit of a kerfuffle. So I wanted to take the Arizona CPA exam because my offer for Honeywell was to start in Phoenix. So I was like, okay, I'll take the Arizona CPA exam. But they wouldn't honor the 3-2 program. According to Arizona State Society of CPAs, you have to have a bachelor's degree in order to be eligible to sit for the CPA exam. And so I pretty much already had my bachelor's degree because I already had done my 120 hours, and this was just sort of my 5th year I was doing. But UF doesn't actually give you your degrees, both your bachelor's and your master's, until you've actually graduated. And so it was this whole ridiculous thing where they kept denying me to sit for the exam because I didn't have this official piece of paper saying that I had my bachelor's degree, even though I had all my credits, and that's not like how this program worked that I was in. So yeah, they kept denying me. I kept getting upset, but I was like, you know what, whatever. Being a CPA is not like being a lawyer. I don't need to, in order to practice being a CPA in Arizona, I don't need an Arizona CPA license. I can kind of get it wherever. So then I figured I'll just apply for Florida CPA, and it was a breeze. They let me in, and I was able to start taking all of my exams, which was good. So just a sidebar on CPA exam requirements and sort of what that process is like. There are 4 exams. There's financial accounting and reporting, also known as FAR. There's regulations, also known as regs, BEC or business environment concepts, I think, and then the audit exam. So all things that are designed to make you a good certified public accountant, right? And because it's Florida, you don't have to take an ethics exam. Some other states, actually I think most of them require you to do an ethics exam, but Florida was like, nah, you don't need to do that. And then you have to have 1 year of work experience, and then you can actually officially become a CPA. So you take your exams, you pass them, and then you have to work for a year more. But in Florida, internships actually count towards your work experience, which is how I was able to get my CPA license before I had been working full-time for a year. I was able to say I had all these Deloitte internships and Honeywell, and those together amounted up to like half a year. So I just had to work, at Honeywell for less than that. So yeah, that was, I guess, really nice. Thank you, Florida. And kind of segueing a little bit, I really like accounting because it's so much of a tangible skill. Like I graduated knowing how to put together or analyze financial statements, or do a debit and credit, or do, a bank reconciliation, things like that. Or like look up, how to search US GAAP or the Internal Revenue Code. So it felt more like a trade skill in the sense that I graduated and it's like I know how to actually do something. Now, when you graduate, you still don't know anything, but I feel like I still had a strong foundation. So when I started actually working in the real world, it wasn't as much of a shock because I was like, okay, I kind of know how this system, I know how it works. So let's fast forward to now March 2020, and of course that's when COVID happened. So the way that it happened is that there was like spring break, and then we went back the first day after spring break, and so that was basically the last time I saw my friends. I saw them the day after spring break, and then UF suspended all courses, and then we just never went back. So I was part of that unfortunate group of people that didn't get a graduation, and I didn't get one for bachelor's or master's because you get it in one time or like at the same time at UF. And so that was the like only really hard part about college, just because it was more on the emotional side, just not being able to see my friends again, not having, the end of year, the graduation parties, like all that stuff, getting really to say goodbye to your friends. Like no one in my class had that. And so that was just kind of an unfortunate situation, but it was a hard time for everyone. So yeah, everything UF ended very suddenly, and I finished out the rest of college remotely. And yeah, but to end on a positive note, I was able to take all my CPA exams before I started working at Honeywell. And so that was great. I was able to basically have everything done by the time I started full time. And for all those out there considering doing the CPA, I highly recommend doing that, because I did have some friends that tried to take, or they were studying for the CPA exam while they were starting work for the first time. And that was just kind of a nightmarish combination, because there's audit, busy season, and that's terrible enough as it is, but then adding studying on top is just not feasible. It's very difficult. So if you can, study and take the exams before you start working. So okay, that's it for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, which is where I'm going to talk about my experience working in corporate jobs at Honeywell and then at Figment. And then from there, we'll go on to part 3, just talking about how I started my own crypto accounting firm. Okay, so with that, thank you so much everybody for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you.